Okay, let's open up our work session for August 29th. Roll call, please.
Lear,
Here.
Casanello, Pater, Larson,
Here.
Schneider, Ramirez, Morris.
Here. Okay. Do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, time for the agenda items. Got the monthly financials.
Good evening, Council. The financials you're looking at are from data from 8/23. One of the biggest line items to take note of was the meals tax. They are coming in. At the time, it was only 5 out of 20, but I'd like to inform you guys, update you that as of today, we have received everyone's meals tax. That number is actually at 101,000. We have also received our cigarette tax. That'll be updated in the next week's meeting. There's not really much on these financial reports to discuss unless you have any specific questions on any line item. I am here to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? I think
We're approximately at 5% of the year.
5% of the year.
Just in 1 month, right? The first month?
The first month, it should be 8.3.
8.3?
Yeah.
Okay. In telecommunications, it's not front-loaded, correct?
Which line?
121, 1018.
No, it is not. Let me see real quick. What is that? One of them is actually for, well, actually, one is front-loaded, the most recent one. It covers the time period of August 22nd through November 21st.
Okay, so there's
So
a
part
portion.
of it is,
Okay.
yes. Yes.
That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. We'll move on to the next agenda item, the RFP notice of intent.
Yes, so next week on Tuesday at our regular session meeting, we will be looking for council's directive to proceed forward with the notice of intent to award the Haymarket Town Park Streetscape Project, RFP 2022-001, to the engineering group. Katie McDaniel, our town engineer, has done the review of the RFP. Everything has checked out well, and they received a positive recommendation from the town of Occoquan, which was one of their listed references. In your agenda packet on page 6, we've included the timeline schedule that they've given us for their tentative timeline. I also want to call to note, we had previously done a tally, and it was an estimated amount that it was going to come in at $86,000. That number has changed just ever so slightly. It is $89,500, and that's at the top of packet page 7 in this letter. So if you have any questions tonight, please let me know, but we will be looking for directive to move forward with noticing the letter of award.
We don't need to do another public hearing, correct?
No, sir. We will award the letter as soon as we do that. We can do it as quick as the day after the meeting next week. Katie and I will schedule a meeting to have everyone on hands. Roberto, myself, Katie, their group will all meet here, go through the notice to proceed, and do all the necessary steps to set up communication and start the process.
Just one question, Mr. Mayor. Are there any penalties attached to the NTP?
Let me review that with Katie and get back to you on that.
Because we do want to make sure they're comfortable with it if they surpass the 255.
Yeah, and it's been so long since I reviewed this. This engineering plan does include compensation for all the surface water runoff of the park, that the design will compensate for all the surface water runoff.
This design will compensate for the surface water at the front that would be triggered once you put the curb and gutter in and the sidewalk. It may not include everything all the way back to the rearmost property line of the park. That would be handled in a site plan, but it would take care of everything up front
Okay.
for the sidewalk.
Because you got to engineer for where your stormwater impact is, not necessarily for the, I mean, you're going to have to take into consideration the sheet flow down the hill,
Right.
but
so-
that will be part of the calculation, or it
Yeah,
should be.
so they'll take that into consideration, but the backmost corner that may tip a little downwards towards villages, won't necessarily
Yeah.
sheet flow towards the front.
Well, I'm just worried about the front west corner, because that is a collection point, and I know that'll end up getting disturbed, and that's probably the primary collection point of that.
Yes.
Well, I think
and-
that's one of the issues we've had with the design phase, is what do we do with the stormwater in that corner? And
Yeah.
that's what they're going to have to engineer, is the solution.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure that was in there. I couldn't
Oh, yeah.
remember. It's been so
Oh, yeah.
long. So just wanted to confirm that. Okay. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Then we'll move on to the ARB and Planning Commission vacancies.
Good evening, Council. You do have 3 applications before you, 2 for ARB and 1 for Planning Commission. The Planning Commission applicant would be Ms. Freeman. She's a longtime resident of the town and is willing to serve on the Planning Commission, and this would be a 4-year term for her. Your 2 applications for ARB would be, the one would be fulfilling the unexpired term, which Ms. Stacy Karen, I guess that's how you pronounce her last name. She would be wants to fill the unexpired term. That would be the expiration date of June of next year, 2023. And then Mr. Ben Barbin would be doing a 4-year term. He comes with some architectural background, so he would be, I believe, would be a good candidate for the ARB. And Stacy,
Kuran.
yeah, she has a background in design, so that's also a good candidate for ARB.
So good artistic eyes.
Mm-hmm. So you'll need to make a motion to approve those next Monday.
Okay,
What's
now,
it?
sorry. Now, Sandra Freeman,
Mm-hmm.
I guess she was interested in the ARB up front. She's a,
She was interested in ARB up front till she started asking questions to find, and when she found out the difference between planning and ARB, she switched her desire and just wanted to come on to planning instead.
okay, so this is her choice then. We didn't
Correct.
force her saying.
Correct.
Okay.
What are the vacancies right now?
There is one on planning, unexpired term for 4 years on Planning Commission, and 2 vacancies on ARB. One is an unexpired 4-year term, and the other one is one is a full term, 4-year term, and then the one unexpired term to finish out.
And if this is approved, that brings the numbers of ARB to?
5 and 5.
5 and 5? Thank you.
That fills the ARB, I mean,
Fills
the
both.
planning
Yes, fills
commission.
both.
Okay,
Fills both,
okay.
Because we had reduced the PC from 7.
from 7 to 5. You did that by,
Thank you, ma'am.
It never should have been 7 in the first place, but that's just my,
You weren't on government at the time, so you had no vote. Why didn't you
any
run?
questions?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
I don't have anything. Okay, so we'll move on then. Next item, the town charter amendments.
Yes, so does anyone on council have any additional amendments for the charter since our last red line version has gone out? I know that Mr. Passanello had several items that he wanted to address, and we'll be bringing up with council at the next meeting, but I wanted to see if anybody else had anything to put out there at this time.
Well, if I recall, the last meeting, we did have some comments, and those were kind of adjusted and passed through emails.
Yes, and I'll read out Mr. Passanello's comment so that everybody can be thinking about it. But this will be something that's going to come back up at the meeting next week when he is in attendance. So Article 3, Section 1, Part 4, and this is his comment read directly. I have a serious concern regarding the potential for abuse given past censure practice, expelling a member due to disorderly conduct. How is this defined? He is okay with a form of sanction, but will not support removal given that should be a voter decision every 2 years, unless for malfeasance, misfeasance, criminality, etc. I think it gives too much authority to a leader and easily swayed members, and it also strips the voters of their vote and voice. Additionally, it seems that it is more difficult to remove an appointed PC member, for example, than an elected official. So, something for you guys to think about for our discussion next week.
Was there a clear reference to an item number?
Article 3, Section 1, Part 4, or Item 4.
Yep, and I think it's a legitimate complaint because it does disenfranchise the voter, their votes. So it's definitely worth a discussion.
I love his train of thought on it. So
well, it's actually contrary to state code, but the state code provides for pre-existing charters to trump the state code. So all we would be doing is actually making it comport with the state code by taking that provision out.
are you saying that item 4 is not in the state code?
The authority to remove by the council is not in the state code. It's back to specifically.
What was it there
precluded.
before and then
It was there
Okay.
before they made the legislative change, yes.
So somehow, based on that, that is how
We were
it crept
grandfathered.
in?
Yeah, we were
Okay.
grandfathered with that language.
No, I would love to discuss it at the next meeting because I love the direction that Mr. Passanello is going with it, based on his experiences in the past.
Okay, any more comments on this?
Not for the record, sir.
If you guys think of any this week, please definitely let us know because so that you're aware, we are going to have our public hearing at the meeting next week. And what we're going to do is any comments or any amendments that are going to be proposed at the meeting, we will be updating the document live on the computer, and then it'll be something that if you choose to vote on it that night, we're voting on that most amended version. So we can pull it up on the presentation screen, but it'll be something that we actively are doing at the meeting, so everyone is following along.
I remember the last meeting I attended with this discussion, we talked about the difference between the November election and the appointment in July. Was that addressed?
Yes, that was addressed, and it should have been modified to be March appointments. Is that correct, Kim? All March appointments.
Now, we did submit a rough draft to Danica, our representative for state, right? So that we at least get our first agenda
We've got a
item.
placeholder
We
so
do.
that we can get
That's
an
correct.
early bill number, yes.
Okay.
We just have to provide her with the final draft so that so the final draft can be forwarded to legislative services.
Okay.
So when is the mayor appointed?
The mayor's never
In
appointed.
the
No,
election.
I mean, sorry, not appointed, but the election, the appointments, like vice mayor,
So,
liaisons.
so the first meeting of the new council will be the decision of who's going to be vice mayor and the liaisons. That's your organizational meeting. The appointments of your staff members
It's March.
is going to be in March. And what we did is we followed, it was originally with the July office, you guys would take office July 1. It would then be in September, so we followed that same pattern. You take office January 1, it will be in March.
Okay, any more questions? Let's move on. Street safe, safe streets and roads.
Yes, so also at next week's meeting, we will be bringing forward the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant discussion. We're asking for council to give a directive to send a letter of support to Prince William County for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. This is something that the county will be applying for in order for us to, well, in order for the county to go forward with doing railroad crossing improvements at the different railroad intersections. This ties into the quiet zone discussion that Joe and I have been having with Prince William County's Transportation Department, along with getting feedback from the FRA. So that's something, it'll just be, we're asking for a directive and support from the entirety of council.
Will that document that I put together a while back, will that assist in any way?
I think that we could include it as, you know, here's additional information that would support this and further show that the town would be on board.
Yeah, I mean, you can even just take the section that targets the railroad crossing, if that's all of interest. But if it's going to be county, I'd prefer to do both sides of Jefferson Street, since we do have the adjoining path from the Heathcote construction that's going to happen.
Do they plan to extend that shared use path further down to the railroad tracks, or are they still going to stop at halfway between Somerset and town?
Halfway, it turns, you can see where the turn is for it, so it's missing about 100 feet.
Yeah.
So
That was my fear.
twofold discussion. This that we're asking for is specifically in coordination with the quiet zone work that we're trying to get done. So what this will be is, this is for the crossing improvements, for them to do the updates to the Jefferson, Old Carolina Railroad crossing, and then the Route 15 one. And then what you guys are discussing is kind of a second arm of it that they are working through their transportation department. The sidewalk does end at that portion that Somerset's already proposed, and what they now want to discuss with us is having it cross the street and doing a boardwalk style sidewalk or walk of some sort that goes over the wetland area and ultimately crosses there, so there's no bridge expansion that's required or other
But
pervious
I would
surface.
argue that since you still have to cross the railroad tracks, that this pedestrian improvement will be part and parcel with the quiet zone improvements, because you're not going to redesign the crossing and not factor in
Correct.
the pedestrian crossing.
They're gonna factor in the pedestrian crossing right there at the crosswalk, and they're trying to figure out the next part. But since it is in the RPA and the flood zone, they're having to think about how to do it, whether it's a boardwalk
It's
versus.
an RPA on either side of the road, so, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is something that should have been done a long time ago with the county supervisor's trip funds, but I think
So-
we
so
all,
what is
I
the-
think we all know where we rank on the priority list of the county.
So what is the county requesting of us?
A letter of support for the grant application so that they could get grant funding in the next calendar year in order to move forward with the design and crosswalk improvements.
Cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this one?
That's only one baby step. We'll take little baby steps. Next comes the pinch mark right there in front of the Bean House for the Jefferson Street, right? Safety all the way. Okay. My two-bit comment. Sorry about that, guys.
Well, I thought your
Bother
two-bit
me,
comment
no.
was stormwater.
Work session, I don't care.
Well, that's still in my mind, but, okay, we'll move on to the next item, the surplus presentation.
Okay, so tonight we do have the fiscal year 2022 surplus discussion presentation. However, with the half of council missing tonight, I do not know if it is the most productive use of our time to go through the entirety of it. I'm happy to go through as much or as little as you guys would like, have a discussion on it, talk with everyone here. I will, though, be presenting it again next week at our Tuesday night meeting since we have the public hearing, and we'll hopefully have full attendance from council. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys for your decision.
I would just run the slides through with a quick presentation, just in
Okay.
case somebody's watching.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, just burn it quickly so that the public does have a chance to visualize it with
Yep.
comments as opposed to just an agenda packet.
And this material is available online as well,
Yes,
correct?
it is completely in your agenda packet, so Roberto's going to pull it up here. We can go through the very brief discussion. We'll kind of give it the 30,000-foot view tonight, and then we'll get into the weeds of it next Tuesday evening. Again, it will be available. So this past fiscal year, we have had a surplus. So tonight, one of the things that we want to discuss with council is opportunities for allocating this money. So go ahead, slide. So some key discussion points that we're looking at is what can we do with this town surplus? One of the proposed opportunities or options was the real estate tax refund. Another item is capital improvement projects, and then we're also going to hit on the future revenue forecast and what may change in the years to come.
So this page here just basically states out, explains what a surplus is. Also gives us the current surplus amount, which in actuality, I'm going to update this for the next Tuesday meeting because we actually have received our final sales revenue today. So this surplus actually bumped up to $507,748. We'll go ahead and also revise that for Tuesday's meeting.
And 500,000 was what? Nothing.
Bob's estimate?
One thing I do want to point out that these numbers are pre-audit. As y'all well know, I'm in my annual audit currently. I will be meeting with them in about 2 weeks here on site remotely. So this is a pre-audit number. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that. This next page, page 5, basically just kind of tries to highlight how we obtained the surplus. As y'all know too, last year, this fiscal year, the fiscal year FY22 and 2021, we did have CARES Act funds that we were able to use some of those funds to offset some of the costs being used from expenses being used with operational funds. Also kind of states where some of the revenue local taxes that we have, meals tax, business tax, and sales tax were higher than predicted. This is the first budget post-COVID as well too that we were being conservative with. It just goes into details too, as a reminder to residents out there and people that may not know, but With some of the CARES Act funds too, we also created programs for the Shop Small programs, Shop Locals programs, and grants for local businesses in the town. This next page also just kind of highlights some of the proposed opportunities or options that the town will have with the surplus. Going to proposed real estate refund, the town park sidewalk, the town center master plan, and the proposed park building rehabilitation.
So, transitioning here, Roberto will give us an update next week on how the pie exactly splits for what's remaining if we were to go forward with the real estate tax refund. So
You just flip-flop the colors and the percentages.
pretty much it'll flip-flop, so we'll have just a little bit more than 50% remaining.
Now this page here, page 8, from the meeting that you guys all had last month, using the maximum, which was $250,000, to be used towards the real estate tax refund. Page 9 basically just kind of explains what the real estate tax refund is, what the timeline. I apologize. Who qualifies for the real estate tax refund, and who can expect to get the refund in a timeline. These are all going to be variable depending on what the council decides and votes on. Page 10 just kind of gives a rough estimate on the average townhouse refund, what it would look like. A townhouse in this situation would be about $265 back. In a single-family home will be about $391. This again is just an average that we're using.
A quick question on that. How do you base the refund on someone who's been here for the partial year?
That is going to be part of the discussion. But the way we have discussed as of right now is we're going to, whoever owned the home on the 31st of December of 2021 is who will receive the refund. But we can get into more discussion with that.
Okay. But your concept primarily is an all or nothing?
Correct.
Okay.
Page 11 basically just kind of will discuss and explain how and when this would be, the refund checks will be mailed out, how would they be administered. So we can discuss that as well.
Before you get into that, I think it's worth noting that we're sort of the anomaly in the terms of being the only jurisdiction, to my knowledge, that's ever issued one. And now there are other jurisdictions who are contemplating it, and one county who's contemplating on doing something similar. I'm not sure how they're managing to do this within the framework of the state code. I think it's Buckingham County is going to credit the surplus against their car tax.
So, yes. So in the midst of this research I was doing and working with this, I reached out to Mr. Fred Parker. He's been a county treasurer for Washington County for 30 plus years. Just trying to get ideas with him and stuff, and how Washington County actually reached out to our town attorney to get an idea how we're going to, come to this conclusion, how we're going to execute it. But what I found out from him is they're not doing real estate. What they're going to actually do is looking into waiving personal property taxes, not real estate, but personal property, not necessarily the real estate. So there are counties that are doing that. I know Stafford has a ordinance on how to go about it, but they haven't actually never implemented it. So it's not unheard of, but not many have done it.
I would argue that we're on much more firm statutory ground, because I'm not aware of any statutory provision by which you can do that credit, but there is specifically a statutory provision by which we can do the refund. I like what they're doing. I'm just more comfortable with staying within the confines of the state code rather than trying to make up a new way of jiggering the books.
Yeah.
Okay, page 12, again, states what the remaining of the surplus, how it would be used in CIP, to address CIP opportunities.
Some of the different options that we've been looking at are 2 of our current ongoing projects and 1 proposed project. So if you want to advance one slide. Current ongoing, we have our town park sidewalk. We'll be awarding that RFP here shortly. So we're in the design phase of it, and we're expecting that that contract's going to go out in September. We looked just, a couple agenda items before, and we have about 255 days to the completion of that design phase. So we can allocate some monies from the surplus towards this design phase portion. We are currently looking at using ARPA funding for that, and also looking ahead for the construction phase of it. We have currently slated at a staff level that we would utilize ARPA funding and grants if applicable for the project. That's something that once we get further into the design phase, we have better construction numbers through bonds and everything we can look into. So that's one idea. Second idea, again, we are in the design engineering phase of the town center master plan. This is to update and finalize the site plan. This is specifically for the exterior work on the site. That's going to be your stormwater, your curb and gutter. It's going to be properly paving the entirety of the parking lot to include grading, and then connecting with proper entrances to the Washington Street entry exit and Jefferson Street. So we are working through that with the engineering phase. We do currently have it funded within the budget, but this is also an option for the construction phase of how we can apply for certain grants if applicable, or pull certain loans and utilize some of the surplus monies here as well. And then lastly, an option that we are more recently looking at is we've received a lot of feedback from our community residents and the surrounding community that they would like to see this home better utilized and have a spot for the community. So at a staff level, we are presenting that this building could be a great opportunity to have a very simplistic meeting place, but essentially a building that is an open space. First come would be our residents, and then we would open it up to the greater community. But it would be somewhere for nonprofit organizations, birthday parties, HOA meetings, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, etc. to utilize. So one of the things that we're currently working on is getting proposals from structural engineers. We just had one come out last week. They're prepping a proposal for us. We hope to have that here very soon. Depending on the cost of the proposal, there's an option for different funding as well. But this proposal and ultimately the analysis is going to give us a better idea of what condition the building is in and what the next steps will need to be, whether it is a full rehabilitation of the building. We do know there's issues in the basement. The upstairs is a little bit better, but we'll work through that and keep everyone kind of current on what the ideas are. But again, surplus monies could be utilized for any portion of this project, whether it be the design phase, the actual construction and rehabilitation, and also kind of the park area in general, whether it be updates to the gravel lot so we can allot for more parking, or cleaning up the drive and the access.
Before you go to the next topic, I just want to kind of give everybody a sense of why we came up with this proposal. By utilizing the surplus funds, you'd be utilizing them for one-time costs, not operational costs. And particularly if we use them to fund things that were previously funded with ARPA funding, because of the way that we handled the ARPA funding, and the ARPA funding is no longer encumbered, It allows us just to take the ARPA funding, back it out of the equation, and put it back in the reserve for whatever purposes we want, since there are no constraints on it.
So the next part of this presentation is basically some of, just giving you an idea, some of the stuff that are coming up that will affect revenue-wise and expense-wise for the town. First of all, one of them would be the debt reduction, proffer funds, or condition of approval funds as well, in our ARPA funds. So as everyone knows, in our budget, we currently hold an expense for a debt obligation. We have discussed this a few times, even during budget season, but as you can see, this is actually the breakdown of what the remaining payments will be. I did not include this current year's because we are already making them. We have already made the main principal payment. We just need to make the interest in February. So this is what it looks like by the end of this fiscal year, what the town will be with balance due still. So this would significantly reduce the debt and give us more funds flexibility when it comes to the funds, as well too. By the end of this, that maybe a discussion on another loan if the town center project is something they want to go forward with. The next page, page 20, talks about the proffers or conditionals of approval. As you know, the Van Meter and Crossroads, once they came in, Van Meter is going to do conditions of approval funds, which will follow up the next page for developing here. These are funds that are specific to what they can be used. And this next page here actually breaks down what the Robinson Village funds would look like. We have already collected on the first 4 units. The total $77,264. Once the project is complete, though, the total funds that the town will receive is $734,008.
And what's important to note about these types of funds is you'll see they're broken up into line items, and we have a different amount being received for each of these line items. So the first one up on the screen is your Parks and Recreation, and we're slated to receive $144,000 for that. That's specifically for the town to then utilize and invest in our Parks and Recreation amenities, services, capital improvements that we have here. So so long as it is put towards this use, it is an okay expenditure. We can do that. It is not heavily restricted. It has to be, though, for Parks and Recreation.
It has to be for CIP expenditure. You can't use it for an operational expense.
Right, we don't really have any operational expenses on
Well,
Park
mowing the
right now.
lawn and all that stuff.
But the
The
same thing applies to public
maintenance.
safety. You can't use it to, sorry, Chief, we can't use it to say, pay the officers a bonus. We can only use it for capital
Right.
improvements. Every one of these has to be, is constrained by a spending, you can only statutorily spend it on capital improvements. You can't do it, you can't use it for operational expenses or salaries.
So what we would be proposing under this would be to utilize for capital improvements, as we discussed with the 3 projects specifically, transportation and Parks and Rec is where they would fall under. The schools line item, that is earmarked for the capital improvements that the local schools that serve our town would utilize, and that's something that at a later date, once the monies are received, we would reach out to them, have them issue proposals, and we would go through a separate process of reviewing those items to be funded.
I think what the council needs to bear in mind is that we have struggled with both the fire department and the school division in the past, who would rather we simply give them the money and let them choose what, essentially allow them to put it into their general fund and spend it on what they desire. But because of the way that the enabling legislation is written, the proffer monies have to be used to offset the direct impact of the, they've even more narrowly defined it than they did prior to 2018. So it has to, the money has to be used on capital improvements that have that are directly impacted by the construction of those houses. So I was actually thinking of this the other night. We can't even spread it out to multiple elementary schools. We can only spread it out to the school of record, middle, high school, and elementary for that particular subdivision. Otherwise, there's no nexus between the other schools and that subdivision. And that's something that we've got to make very, very clear to the school board, because I don't think they understand the concept, at least given past discussion. Same thing with the fire department. Now, the fire department will get a little bit of leeway because we're serviced by Engine 4 and 24.
Private schools are involved?
Can't give it to a private school.
Yeah, public.
We can give it to the PTA. And that's the threat that we used last time we had school proffer monies. The finance director, as I recall, and the superintendent were adamant that we just allow them to take the money and spend it as they wished wherever in the county they chose to spend it. And our response was, you will spend it on these particular schools, or since we have language within the proffer that gives us the option of either giving the money to the school division or giving it to the PTAs, we sort of hit them with the ultimatum: spend it the way we tell you to spend it, or we give it to the PTAs. They didn't like that, so they spent it the way we asked them to spend it, because they didn't want the PTAs to get the money. We still have that proffer language in there, don't we? I think. But we do have oversight over it, just like we had with the fire department when it came to the last expenditure of those grant funds.
Yeah, that was grant though.
Yeah, there's a little more leeway on the grant money. There is no leeway on this, because if we don't comport with the language in the statute, and the developer ever wants to question or contest our expenditure, we could be liable for returning the money to them. In fact, if we don't spend it, we could potentially be liable after, I think it's a period of 5 years, I think it is. They could ask for the return of those proffer funds, unspent proffer funds.
I'm sure once we approach, especially like the schools, the 3 schools in our zone, they would come up with, and they have the guidelines, they will come up with ways that it could be spent to enhance their facilities and still be in the parameters of what they're required.
Yeah, let them carry that to the school division. Here's what we'd like, here's how much money's available.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have the principals of the 3 schools sit down with us and kind of.
I mean, these are monies that we fought for to get as proffers. So I mean, $391,000 to the schools. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, we got to assume we're getting more from Crossroads, but that's more than a year away, I think.
Right. No, that's great.
But, the nice thing about it is the Parks and Rec money, in theory, in conjunction with the surplus, we could probably take care of most, if not all, of the park building costs, if it's worth saving.
So I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this, but can a student elect not to go to the school in that zone?
Yes.
They can.
Well, you have to apply to a program that's offered. It's not offered at that school, but offered at a different one, at least at the high school level.
Are you guys at Battlefield?
Yeah, we're at Battlefield.
So can you elect to go to another high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Battlefield, we have the IT, if you test it.
Yeah,
Programs, and people come for that. And then if
Patriot.
they live near Manassas, in their zone,
But if you wanted to do music, they've got that down at Colgan.
Yeah,
They've
Patriot
got,
has
different-
culinary.
language arts,
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. And it starts, unless it's changed significantly in the last 20 years, it starts in the middle school with IB middle years program that you can select. And then I think, again, I don't know how much it's changed, but Marsteller, I think, used to be math and science.
But that's an opt-out that doesn't impact where we have to send the money.
Okay, okay. All right, I'm sure we'll fine tune it once we, and I think reaching out to the schools is like the way to go, once we know which ones. Thank you.
So, next page talks about the American Rescue Plan, kind of states what it is. Also explains how it's not, is it restricted or not, and how we did a one-time allowance declaration for lost revenues, so to make it unrestricted. It is put aside in a separate account to be used for that. The total funds that the town received was $1,738,878.
Lastly, I stuck these questions here to kind of jog some discussion and correspondence back and forth on council. I think that the first two questions are ones that our residents are going to want to see answered as we work through this refund discussion. And then lastly, I have invited Chief here tonight to also be available for council to ask if there's any police department services or any needs there that we have not covered, because that is something that we have not quite gone through on our portion of the surplus discussion. We mainly went for capital improvements that the town is looking into doing. But with up-and-coming development, there may be service improvements as well.
Yeah, and I don't know how that would fall in if you're throwing everything in CIP or having restrictions for CIP, but
We've
I
had
do.
this discussion with the chief, and a lot of it revolves around the proffers, and we've already talked about potential use of the proffer funds. Since he's pretty, tell me if I'm speaking out of turn here, Chief, since we've pretty much hammered out all the equipment deficiencies and other landmines,
Yes.
I think we had settled on the possibility of maybe having to do it for a cruiser replacement
Yeah, on the proffer side.
on the
Yes,
proper side. Because of the requirement to do it for CIP.
As to equipment.
Yeah, but also with the, these proffers, it kind of shows added development in the town. Do you see any stress on your scheduling?
Well, sir, looking at the Crossroads project and the urbanization and residential population that will be there, when you coincide those two, you usually see an uptick in criminal activity, whether it's misdemeanor or felony type. So there is a concern for that. Currently, I have no numbers that would dictate that because it's not operational down there. There's nothing built. There's nobody moved in. There's no residents there. But looking at projections and my feelings and knowing how that works, there will be an uptick in service. And I could see the potential for adding a man down the road, another employee down the road. And of course, it comes with that the magnified cost. It's not just the fact of adding the person and then having to pay them and benefits. It's equipment that goes with that, and then it's more maintenance on the equipment. It's more gas. It's more and more and more.
Yeah, training, tool sets, everything.
Correct. I mean, I can get really detailed on the expansion of it, but you know it's not some small project. So the proffers, again, like Mr. Ware, Councilman Ware was saying, was specifically equipment related.
Yeah. What do you foresee our understanding of this coming about? Will it be a little bit previous to this being fully developed, so we can at least understand and plan?
I can give you my professional opinion, sir. Is there's no sense in putting a thumb in a dike once the water's rolling out, and I guess would be one way to characterize it. But it'd be better to be ahead of the project prior to, and then if we did to see a reason or a way to add that staff, is to not only have that person for the criminal activity that might become afoot afterwards, is to try to prevent it. Make him or her a crime prevention specialist, and actually work with those businesses and residents during the construction and preempt the criminal activity. And then that limits the recidivism rate that you have down the road. You have a crime, you're going to have another crime. It's going to be inherited crime after that point. But if you inherit the prevention of that crime, then you limit what the past or what will happen in the future on that criminal activity. You have the potential to limit that. So my professional opinion would be sooner rather than later, rather than just having everything there and then, okay, let's try to put the fire out after we have it. I would rather just not have a fire.
I think when we were talking in finance, I think we were already contemplating the addition, not in this budget year, but the next budget year, possibly need. It's all going to depend on what their build-out schedule is, and I don't think we have any sense of that, do we?
Right now,
At least for the residential units.
residential is expected in early 2023 that residents will be occupying.
They'll definitely have seven model units is what they were discussing.
Yeah, and they said they were going to have the pad sites for the restaurants up 4 months ago, so you'll pardon me if I don't have a whole lot of faith in their
Yeah.
projections.
They were laying stormwater systems in last Friday.
Yeah, when we went through there.
So they were laying that for the
And-
townhouse development. I think it'll move quick.
Especially with the money, that's where they make a big buck from.
Curb and gutter was almost complete, right? Wasn't they doing the last?
Backside?
For the main drag around the townhouse development, curb and gutter is pretty much complete. That's what they have to turn over, including the stormwater and essentially the pad site, if you will, for the townhouse.
When are they going to lay the electric, gas, water?
I think they have to finish the stormwater part in the back first, and then
They'll lay that.
Whole-
I don't see them. I don't see them breaking ground before the weather turns.
Pulte's very involved. It'll be an interesting development how it does come online, but they are projecting early 2023.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question wholly, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I just hit the tip of the iceberg for you or you want to get it further into the weeds, but that's the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's just, I want to start to get the planning rolling. I also, I can't remember how we hired you on what portion, well,
You don't
in
know
the
how
sense.
we did it?
No, I remember, but I mean, in the sense of,
Were you hired?
where we, what percentage of your time was supposed to be part of being in an active patrol as opposed to administrative and
Well, you all made it perfectly clear that you wanted me to do both.
be a working, yeah.
Breaking down, I would, my last equations that I came up with, currently I'm at 56% on administrative duties.
Yeah.
56% of my day is spent with conducting admin issues.
And I
And-
have
and I
no
see with-
issue with that.
Yeah, and I see with, the added response, maybe we need some type of administrative support. We need to go through a full vetted assessment.
I don't have the
How long have I been saying that?
I don't have the full breakdown of my duties, but 56% is admin, I can tell you that, like
Yeah.
56.4.
How much of your burden would be relieved by a part-time admin? Just the
Of that
data
50
entry,
of that fif-
filing.
56%, I would say at least 50%. Now, there is a small percentage that an admin, a civilian employee
Only
cannot.
you can do, I get that.
Yeah, LE.
But it would make life easier for the sergeant as well, correct?
Yes, the lieutenant, yes. it would.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't have his figure, I haven't run that recently.
Yeah.
But he's going to be pretty close to, say, 35 to 40
Yeah.
in his duties on that. But I could give you a full breakdown, that's the one figure I just remember.
I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, we just kind of jumped in on this, but these are the type of things we need to look at for planning.
that's actually
to
built
prepare.
into the budget, isn't it?
I believe so.
Part-timer? I think we built that in.
We did, and also, I have all those figures. That data is available. I just don't have it readily available. I wasn't expecting to give a full breakdown tonight on duties, but I can do that. The data is there.
Well, we got time. I'm assuming about 6 months before we really need to start to vet this out.
If we want to get ahead of the game, and I don't know how long I've been carrying on about the need for an admin, could you have what is this, August? September? Work session in October?
For sure. Oh, wait a minute, what day is the work session on? Let me look at that.
Probably Halloween.
I don't think you'll be here.
October work session.
So the 20
I don't have a
whatever.
calendar up
It's the
anymore.
24th because I believe, is it 24th or 1st? We moved it off of
October
Halloween.
work session is actually November 1st, because your work session.
Halloween.
Are you gonna have an upset stomach from Halloween?
Yeah, a real bad one in Florida.
Well, here's a thought, just a thought while we're on.
Move it to the
schedule
November
topic.
meeting.
We could move it to October 24th, which is a week, is the fourth Monday. Move it up 1 week.
Have we already moved the meeting date?
We're going to need to come to you on Tuesday night to move the October regular session date from the 3rd to the 4th because Mayor, Vice Mayor, myself, and the clerk will all be at BML. So we can ask to move the work session that night too.
I'd rather do it the fourth Monday than have 3 meetings in November,
Okay, so why don't we propose that?
especially with the holidays. I mean, that would really stack up the November meetings,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, November would be a mess.
Yeah.
I'm good for October 2-4.
Okay.
Going gator
I'm
hunting?
good when you all tell me to be here, but I would prefer October 2-4.
Going gator hunting?
Yeah, in Disney World.
I hear they're on the golf course.
That's right. And go on the safari ride.
That's
You can
right.
Take some out.
That's right. I'll get some good pictures for you.
Okay. Okay, any more discussions? Did I interrupt you on these questions?
Nope, just think of if you guys have any other additional questions. The entirety of the presentation is in the agenda packet from tonight. So if you have anything else for Chief, please let him know, let us know, and we'll rediscuss Tuesday.
Okay. Before I close everything out, everybody good with their questions on this topic?
Good.
Good? Okay. Next agenda item.
Move adjourned.
You know, if I don't say anything, you can't go anywhere, right?
Leans on me.
It's a work session.
I can.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Okay.
Ladies, thank you for
Thanks for coming.
out.